first.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, like she said, I'm Robin Schneider, Legislative Liaison for National Patients' Rights Association. We are a 501c6 lobby trade association, business trade association. We are lobbying at both the state and local level for medical marijuana issues. Some of the things we do is go into municipalities and work with them on trying to implement more reasonable ordinances. Some of the cities have done some things that are quite illegal, so we try to give them different examples of what would be acceptable and then convince them to do a little bit of a better job being in compliance with state law with their ordinances, and that's a big job. We also work at a state level on state issues. Right now we're working on House Bill 4271, Medical Marijuana Provisioning Center Act, and that is a bill to license dispensaries at a local level, a local option bill, and we felt that that was something that would be reasonable and more likely to pass, so that's the route we went. We're also now working on getting a concentrates bill introduced to offer further protections for all concentrates. And I think that's just actually a quick fix to the Carruthers decision we'll do. But we're working directly with Rep. Cotton's office to decide who will be the best sponsor for that, figure out who wants to take on that issue. We were recently reached out to by a group of pediatric parents who are using cannabis to treat their children's serious illnesses. And what we found was that the Carruthers decision, they feel, puts them at a much greater risk while they're treating their children. Thank you, Ben. Right here. Basically what it said is that they, didn't have a Section 4 defense for extracts or resins of the cannabis plant, but they still could potentially have a Section 8 defense, and that's something that the parents just feel is not a good enough defense for them. So we agreed to use our lobbyists and our resources to help those moms, and what we did was we asked them to make a list of the conditions they were treating and what kind of extracts or extraction process they used and what kind of delivery method, whether that be capsules, tinctures, topical oils, what form of the medication they used for treat their children. And we found it was such a diverse scenario that some moms needed very strong medications that were made with like isopropyl alcohol or Everclear, everything to butane. So we found that it was pretty diverse what they were using, and made the decision that we needed to lobby for protections for all of them. And I know there's been some talk out there in the community of just lobbying for like all natural water-based extracts, and those parents were very clear with us that that is not going to be strong enough to treat their kids' seizure disorders. Specifically, they need a very, very potent extraction process, and felt that that wasn't going to be good enough. So I'm expecting this will be a really tough project to take on, but I think as long as we do what those parents asked us to do, we're doing the right thing. And I'll save the rest for Q&A at the end. Go ahead.
My name is Constance Taylor. I'm a single mom, just like Robin. I only have one child, though, instead of 4. Turn my mic on. Okay, so I co-own Quality Products Distribution LLC, where we distribute a different array of products that you can use for vaporizing and other accessories for the pen. I also am the media spokesperson for the Human Solution for the state of Michigan. I very much believe in the human solution, and with my own court cases right now, no one should go to jail over a plant. And I started in this industry as a protester, getting a little bit more involved in the community, getting more educated. My dad became my patient, and after I was arrested and his 50 grams of Simpson oil was stolen, luckily the community was compassionate enough to not only reach out to me, but Golden Glove Genetics and Steve and Maria Green were able to help me facilitate the full 60-gram treatment back so that I could help him out, but unfortunately it was too late by then. So in my dad's memory, I will continue to fight to end prohibition. It's just a plant, there's nothing scary about it, it's natural. No one should ever be afraid of a plant or what comes from it, and like Robin said, it's very unfortunate that a lot of kids have had this most recent decision taken out on them. And as mothers, all of us really need to come together to really fight for the kids. And Maria has a really hard story herself. She is also the president of the Human Solution and works with me. She's a wonderful person. All of these women on this panel are great, and like Sharmi said, we've all done some pretty proactive things in our industry for the state of Michigan, and I'm very proud to be sitting up here with them. Maria, you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Maria. I'm the president of the Human Solution Michigan Chapter. And I'll tell you a little bit about my story. I want to tell you first, I'm really angry, and I will tell you why. As a woman, I take on a lot of roles: mother, wife, caregiver, problem solver, peacemaker, and fighter. 5 years ago, I voted yes on a law that would protect our sick and our elderly. I thought that this law would give them a hall pass to do something that would help them live their lives in peace and without suffering. And I thought that we were on the path to change. In the last 5 years, those same sick and elderly people are not only fighting against their illness, they're now fighting against the judicial system and against the police system. And this makes me really angry. The people who are supposed to be protected by this law are instead getting beaten to a pulp by the very people who have sworn to serve and protect. Are you guys angry yet? I'm talking a lot about patients and the medical use of marijuana in my presentation today, just because I think that's the most basic and outrageous set of circumstances that is happening in Michigan. I would really love to talk about ending prohibition altogether. I think that that's the end all to all of this, but I feel like if the people of Michigan can't fully understand what's already happening here, then we can't be successful in taking the next step towards the ultimate goal. My husband and I are carded patients and caregivers. We have been for several years. And currently we are fighting the courts, the police, CPS, and that's in addition to fighting epilepsy and MS. We've spent nearly 9 months in court now, and we're nowhere near the end. We still have not been given a chance to even present our cards at court to let them know that we're patients and caregivers and that we shouldn't be here. We've spent loads of money on this system trying to prove our innocence. Money that should be going into raising our children and giving them a home is instead going to drug testing facilities and the Oakland County court system so that they can build new roads. The stress of this ordeal has been so much, too much for my body to handle, that I had to quit breastfeeding my infant long before I wanted to. She was only 3.5 or 4 months old when my body just couldn't take it anymore from the stress. My husband is now back to having life-threatening seizures after being nearly 2 years seizure-free. And most currently, I haven't seen my 6-year-old son in over 3 months now. And that is the court system, the police system, they do not have a plan for that to change anytime soon. Are you guys angry yet? Because I can keep going. You want to know how big this problem is, the prohibition is? We have a real problem on our hands when good families are torn apart and assaulted over a non-toxic plant. We have a real problem on our hands when the war on drugs has progressed so far that our state's most vulnerable people are being tossed in cages with no concern to the delicacy of their health problems. We have a real problem when we have to worry about our kid getting sick and needing to make the choice between following a law or saving their life. And we have a big problem on our hands when things like our daughter's rapists go free, but our daughters themselves get victimized yet again, only this time by the judicial system, for having possessed a gram of pot. You guys should be angry. I talked about the roles that we play: problem solver, caregiver, fighter. What's it going to take for us to become Mama Bear in this system? Women, we are the driving force behind we have been the driving force behind many movements, and we need to be the driving force behind ending prohibition. What is it going to take for you to get angry enough to do something about it and act? It took me losing the life I had known, the health of my loved ones, and the company of my child. Please don't wait that long before you get up and you act on this.
Thank you, Maria, for everything you do in bringing the awareness to this. The Human Solution really caught my eye in that in our organization we really haven't been faced with many who are with what Maria is facing. But when we saw what she did in the support that they offer to those that are. Has anyone here ever stood in court alone? Alone? It's not a very good feeling to stand alone, and I was just so touched that the people now, what they were doing would bring people to stand behind them, so no one would ever have to stand alone in court again. So, thank you.
My name is Charmy Golson, and I'm both a panel member and I'll be moderating today because that's what we do.
I've not finished though. I'm sorry. I still got like my 10 minutes here.
Oh, okay.
That's okay. I'm so touched by what they do. I have to tell you that I'm very attracted to the organization. That's okay. My name is Heidi Parikh, and I am the founder and president of Michigan Compassion. And I want to back up to my first meeting. And it was about 5 years ago. It was at the Southgate Library, and I was sick. So my husband went to the first two, and he came home and he said, well, I found a place to get plants, and I found a place to get some capsules. Actually, I got these little capsules, and it was all new. And so I went then after I felt better, and there was probably one woman there for every 10 men. And I knew that I had to change that, so we did. And we attended the meeting for about a year, 6 months. We began to become active, but I really didn't let my voice be heard. I just listened, learned, and researched, and then became more active. And the first time I had to speak at the meeting, they let me speak. Oh my God, my heart was just beating, because most people don't like to get up and speak, and your heart does beat. And there was no one there besides those that were speaking that wanted to, so I knew that I just had to get up and speak. If I was going to attract other women, I had to get over being nervous. Sitting here today, your heart beats. We were saying just before we talked, we're not public speakers. It's very difficult. So I pushed myself to get up and speak, and the women began to come, and the husbands began to bring their women, and we saw now where we have about a 50-50 ratio of women and men in our meetings, and it's just great to see how far we've come. One of our first events, it was this very similar situation where there was many more men than women. And here, if you look at the event I've watched over the last couple of days, there are so many women. So thank you to the women who are here and are doing what you're doing. It really does make a difference. So thank you for that. And I would like to talk a little bit about what Michigan Compassion does and why we went for our 501c3. I worked for, volunteered for St. Benedict's Church and School about 15, 20 years ago. And I ran their bingo. So when I would go to these meetings, I would always hear, we need money, and you do. You need money to make a difference in the public and with the politicians. So we didn't have any money, the organization didn't have any money, and I knew we had to raise money, but selling buttons for $1 or $2 or a donation at the door is not going to get us where we needed to go. So I thought, how can we legitimately raise money? I will back up. We knew that we didn't dispense at the library, we never would. Our organization knew at the point, well, we knew at the point of applying for our 501c3 that we wouldn't, but we wanted to raise funds legitimately in the community enough to have a big impact. And I realized, I remember going back to the church and the school and the funds that they could raise through their nonprofit of 501c3. So I was heart-bent, hell-bent, heaven-sent to make this happen, and we did. It was not easy. We were mocked, we were laughed at, we were the only organization that didn't dispense. We had to cut out any education about cultivating, and at our board meetings we would have some difficulty with that, deciding, you know, is this right for our membership in the community, and should we continue just not to go for the 501 but to educate in this manner. But there are so many businesses and companies and organizations that help patients get their medicine and help people to cultivate that we realized that we didn't need to be just another one, not just another one, but there were so many that we didn't need to be. So we applied for our 501c3 federally, and you have to apply to the IRS, and they vet you, they go through your paperwork. I'm pretty sure we had a few agents at our meetings to make sure we didn't dispense. We would get phone calls left and right about, more so than we ever got, trying to get us to dispense, people to get us to dispense, and we stayed strong. I remember a woman just kept on me, and she kept calling me, and finally I said, look, I'm not going to dispense to you, please don't ever call me again. And that was it. We never saw her again. So through this time we had some hurdles to get over, and we stayed strong and we stayed true, and we were approved a year after we applied. But what this has done, every cause has a 501c3 usually, nonprofit, that pushes through in the nonprofit aspect of it for the mission, the cause, for the whole cause, not just for themselves. So when we were approved, our goal was to do bingo. And that was what I knew, because that's how involved I was with the 501c3, but I never knew the walls it would break down for major corporations in accepting medical marijuana in the industry. So I'll leave you with two examples of what the doors it's opened, not just for our organization, but for everybody. Google Corporation, I'm sure all of you know of Google. We all do our searching with that, most of us. Well, they're a major worldwide corporation that would not allow anyone to purchase the words marijuana or cannabis anywhere. You couldn't do it to bring your business to the top. And this had gone on for quite some time, and they'd have nothing to do with it. Well, we applied for a grant because we had a 501c3, and Google granted us the first AdWords grant to any medical marijuana company or organization. So what that allows us to do now is to educate the public by bringing the information to the top of the search engine. And, but more so than that, it broke down the walls of a worldwide corporation to accept cannabis and medicine and turn that key to the door to open it for us. So, and they'll say it was the 501c3. No, it wasn't because it was cannabis, but that did help us. And the last example I'll give you is, in order to do bingo, you have to apply with the state, and they send you all the information and what you need back. And they said that we had to have a city officially recognize us as a nonprofit charity for gaming purposes. So we attended the City of Romulus council meeting. We were on the agenda, and we pleaded with them to accept us, and they were perplexed because we provided them beautiful folders with all of our official documents from Judy's office, from the IRS, all of our articles of incorporation, and what we're doing in Romulus. We have a community garden there. We were founded there, and that's why we selected that city. So they all had it, and they were all looking at it, and there is a moratorium against clubs, cannabis, this and that, not against patients and caregivers in Romulus, but they said, you know, these look very familiar, but we're not understanding it. And I said, what you're not understanding is we have the same documents that you do for your bingo and for your nonprofits. And they said, yeah, we recognize these, but they couldn't gather that it was a medical marijuana organization who held these documents. So they said, we'll approve this, but we first have to have our lawyer look at them and make sure they're legitimate. So we're back to Romulus tomorrow night. We've seen a peek of the lawyer's statement, and we are completely legitimate. So we're hoping that we have the City of Romulus recognize us as a nonprofit in the city. So this is where the 501c3 will help knock down the walls that a state nonprofit can't. So that's what we do, and I'm glad to see the women involved. And any questions? And thank you to all these women. I'll tell you, these women are all great. They worked hard for these last 5 years.
Thank you, Heidi. And now it is my turn. So, my name's Sharmi Golson. I'm here to talk to you today about failed drug war and public safety, about how it impacts Michigan families specifically. And these moms, will somebody send out to get these moms? Come in here with that baby. We want you in this room. We can talk over a 2-year-old. It's okay.
We have lots of those.
So I'm the owner, and I was the managing editor of the Midwest Cultivator. So for 4 years I traveled the state, delivering my newspaper every 3 months, talking to all the medical marijuana patients and caregivers, and adversarial people who didn't want medical marijuana all across the state. And I came away with that experience feeling like I had a pretty good handle on what was working, what was not working in the state, how this medicine was helping people, how our failed drug laws were hurting people. Maria put out a call for folks to do something, and she mentioned the fact that there's really no plan in the system right now for the courts, the judicial system, to make right the things that are currently wrong, and that is intentional, because the failed drug war is an actual war. It's a real war with guns and soldiers and strategies and funding, and it's a national war. And so everything that we've experienced here in Michigan over the last 4 years is part of a national strategy. And if you watch really closely as it, as medical marijuana spreads, as it has now to over half of our states, that you're going to see the same strategies that we've endured year after year here in Michigan. They're getting better at it. But the good news is that popular opinion, mainstream opinion, is absolutely changing. The lies that they're spreading and the type of ways that they work so hard to hide and keep clandestine, the atrocities that they're committing, it's getting more and more difficult for them to do it. And so there's this rush. I feel it. I'm sure you guys too, all the raids in Detroit, all these federal raids that we're seeing. There's a rush on a very regional, local level to hurry up and take as much as you can and do as much damage as you can before the end actually comes. What you're going to see state by state in medical marijuana is the first thing, they'll work hard to try to defeat the bill. Then they're going to pass moratoriums like they did here and say, oh, hold on, we got to really see what our choices are here. They'll work on that sort of level. And at the same time, you're going to see sweeps, arrests. The judges will take a look at it and go, this is legal now, dismiss it, and it will be appealed. This is one of the national strategies to defeat medical marijuana, and it was laid out in September of 2010 in a conference in Dearborn by Grand Rapids City Attorney Catherine Misch, who told a room of about 75 municipal leaders that they could They could join in on a federal lawsuit challenging the State Medical Marijuana Act based on federal supremacy. I believe we have a court case in the Supreme Court right now, I don't know the name of it, Robin will, that is going to, they've declared they're going to rule on that as well, whether or not our law is superseded by federal law. What's the name of that?
Wyoming.
The Wyoming, oh, really? That has nothing to do with that case. Oh, they're so smart, those guys. They're so smart. And so Catherine Mish urged all of these people to join in a federal lawsuit, to pass moratoriums, to park police cars outside of compassion clubs if you deem that an inappropriate use of space in your community, and arrest people as they come out. The appeals and all of that kind of work was done to challenge the protections for patients and caregivers provided in the Act. They hope that the higher courts will agree with their very narrow ruling, very narrow interpretation of what they believe medical marijuana should look like. And quite honestly, there are plenty of people who would be very happy if medical marijuana didn't exist and they could continue to arrest us and take our children and take our stuff and put us in jail and circulate us in and out of the criminal justice system. And they're working with the DEA. We know that people are working with the DEA in Michigan. We know that the moratorium language was crafted by the DEA. It's just a little simple, I think it's like a 7-word phrase that gets put into your zoning amendment wherever you live that says you can't have a business or enterprise that conflicts with local, state, or federal law. And that's how they're doing that. And that was written by the DEA, and it was really given to more municipal leaders at the Michigan Township Association meeting in 2009 in the summer. So I want you all to look at how I'm dressed right now. I understand that.
Love the boots.
Jesus Christ. So I understand that Robin's wardrobe was a topic of great discussion yesterday, and the reason I want you to look at what I'm wearing is because today's August 25th. This is the 3rd year anniversary of when the Oakland County Narcotics Enforcement Team conducted sweeps of both businesses and homes as part of their national strategy to eliminate medical marijuana in Michigan. As you probably know, Oakland County Sheriff Michael Bouchard and our now Attorney General Bill Schuette worked hardest together of anyone else in the state to defeat our Medical Marijuana Act. They lost, and they've continued behind the scenes. Schuette's kept his little mouth shut lately, if you haven't noticed. He's quiet about it because he understands that he doesn't have widespread support for his actions. Most people who don't give a damn about pot or marijuana or crack or drugs or any of that stuff care about very basic rights. And those people are wise enough to see that when our Attorney General just is so vicious and so consistent and wastes so many resources to go after something that the people have already said they want, he's lost a lot of support. But on August 25th, 3 years ago, the Oakland County Narcotics Enforcement Team, which is one of 4 counties of the 83 counties in Michigan that do not participate in the Michigan State Police multi-jurisdictional drug task forces. They got their own thing going on. Those guys raided dispensaries, they raided homes, they raided this dispensary, including the dispensary where Barb Agro was working. Barbara is about 70 years old at that time. She was a police dispatcher for years and years. Her husband, Sal, was a football coach, loved in the community. They used a lot of topicals. Their sons were working in dispensaries, and so they had gotten into medical marijuana. And when those guys came in the door at Clinical Relief, Barb said, "Fuck you, we're patients, this is legal." She's an Italian woman, this old Italian woman. "And we grow at home, and fuck you." And so those guys got in their car and they drove to Barb's house, where Sal had just gotten a phone call that they were raiding his son and they put guns to his grandchildren's heads. Whoa. So he took his keys and he got in his car and he drove to his son's house and he made sure they were okay. When he came back, they were raiding his house. Huh. And he took the Oakland County Press through his house after that. You can find that clip online where Sal is talking about the Gestapo and how they came in and they trashed the place. And then he had a heart attack and died about a week later and left Barb Agro a widow after 40 years of marriage. Now, an Oakland County jury was disallowed after they killed her husband from knowing that she was a state-sanctioned medical marijuana patient and caregiver. This is all part of the national strategy. The things that Marie is experiencing with Child Protective Services, that when prosecutors disallow juries from knowing that we're state-sanctioned patients and caregivers, it is a strategy. So that was 3 years ago today. So I'm in mourning, but I want you to look at my boots. because I'm still very, very angry about this. I'm not only in mourning, and I'm not only angry about this, I can tell you, I haven't done anything since Hash Bash, because if you talk to hundreds and hundreds of mothers, just like Maria, hundreds of people who are feeding their children when the guys with guns and masks come in the door because you have marijuana, even after you're a state-sanctioned patient. And I gotta tell you, we've got a pretty firm grasp on what is wrong in this state. And right now, the one thing that we need to know is, where do we go for help? Where do people who are being victimized by Child Protective Services go when those guys come to the house and mess with you? They're not supposed to. We could just give them the law and ask them to read the thing. I'm not sure that's going to be helpful. There's no oversight. There's no oversight with the drug task forces, who are not applying the law uniformly. They're not following the law, and they're not being very professional when they execute a warrant at all. So let's talk about public safety. Let's talk about how the failed drug war, and this is a failed public policy. The drug war was supposed to decrease the flow of drugs into society. It was supposed to save lives from drug deaths, and it was supposed to help, keep it away from children. And after 42 years, it's done the exact opposite. Drugs are everywhere. It's very, very simple to look at this and say this is a failure. And it also, I'm a former staff writer for LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition. They're the cops and judges and prosecutors who work to, end the failed drug war. And they taught me when I worked for them that that enforcing our drug laws decreases public safety. So when we passed the Medical Marijuana Act here, and I started, meeting with these women and seeing all of the impact that the militarization of the police has created on families, I started digging around in the Michigan State Police crime statistics. Michigan is one of only a few states that actually publishes arrest rates per incident. So if this looks like a 12-year-old did they did. My 12-year-old made this. Say that. So probably can't see this at all. Do you want to? Yeah. Thank you. So these are straight from the Michigan State Police crime website. Who do police arrest? And this is statewide. I've been compiling them county-wide. They do not change from county to county or year to year. These are very, very consistent. So the Michigan State Police in 2011, this percentage rate over here is the arrests compared to incidents. So I'll just drive you crazier with more shit you're probably not going to remember, but it makes me feel better to do it. So for instance, in 2011 there were 409 incidents of prostitution reported, and Michigan State Police arrested 335 people. And so that's how you come up with this 82% arrest rate. See, it was good. You understood. Good. I'm glad. So the number for drugs is 40,831 incidents and 32,359 arrests. So you've got, in the top three here, we're doing prostitution, drugs, car theft, assault, and 35%. Assault. Some guy beats the daylights out of your kid. You got a 35% chance of there ever being justice served. Murder, 29 and 35%. Arson, rape. This is my favorite. Michigan's a great place to live if you're a rapist. A great place.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got 15, 16%. And stalking, these are the guys who kill you when they catch you. That's about a 3% arrest rate. Now typically, as you probably know, this failed policy is fueled by money. So our civil asset forfeiture laws allow law enforcement to take everything you own, and they don't have to charge you with a crime, and you don't need to get a conviction either. And so that's why I started compiling the prostitution rates. I was like, why are the prostitution rates through the roof? What can the police do when they catch you with a prostitute? They take your car. So in 2011, we had almost $18.5 million in asset forfeiture across the state. So thank you, honey. This failed policy is fueled by money, and it does not increase public safety. And here are the numbers to prove it. It's like a secret weapon. So I know that it's really not fair to get you guys out, like throw a hand grenade and go, there you go, just have a great day. Here's all this bad stuff that's going on. So what I'd like to do is if anybody wants to speak up about this as well, I'd like to give you a few things to do about this. And one of the things that I think can be most powerful is that you change the conversation. When people want to talk, the only way they're able to continue eviscerating families like this is because they frame it in a public safety message. And so if you just switch that conversation, when they want to talk to you about kids with backpacks getting cards who don't deserve it, you gotta switch it around for them in whatever way seems to make sense for you, and question them. How's the drug war working for you? How's that working for you? So let's say you go out and raid all these dispensaries, or even the guys pulling truckloads of marijuana that's illegal and doesn't fall under the guidelines of the Medical Marijuana Act. They are seizing drugs by the tons and prosecuting it by the gram. And they wonder why we're filling the prisons like we are. Everybody knows this. Michelle, I want you to read Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow. I want you to listen to or read anything by Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, because these are the people who fought on the front lines in this failed war, who are now speaking out about how we have to end it. And tell people that it's immoral, for God's sake. We need to return SWAT, all these drug task forces, they need to be returned to their original intended purpose, which is hostage standoff or domestic terror. You got a guy shooting people from a tower, send the SWAT guys out to get them, please. Yep. Or, as in the case of a very dear family friend of mine whose 5-year-old daughter has been sexually molested all summer by a 12-year-old relative, send those guys to Utica and get that guy, please.
Oh, give me the address.
We can't do that, mister, but I'll talk to you.
You want to bet? I'll just pass that on down the chain.
Old school.
Get a picture, man, he done.
Well, that's one way to do it. It is. And where I come from, that's how we take care of stuff too. But I can tell you something. I'm so thrilled to hear Cece say the word prohibition here. We've got to change the dialogue. This is drug prohibition. Women like ourselves made alcohol illegal so long ago, over 50 years, like how long? 70 years ago with alcohol prohibition. We said, this is nuts, our men are drunk, let's make it illegal, let's end this, okay? And after 10 years, what happened? We had rampant police corruption. Rampant. Our kids were dying from an unregulated bathtub gin product that was available everywhere, right? And we had like gangs, little tiny jerkwads like Al Capone became big, powerful gangsters. And we got the same thing going on now. We tell our kids to stay away from drugs, and then we slide a pot of gold next to it, and it's everywhere. We've got our kids dropping out of school so they can make money with drugs, more so than they'll ever earn, with a college education, so they think. So after 10 years, mothers just like us, women just like us, we said, oh, hell no, this is not working, and we re-legalized alcohol, and we put an end, and it was save our children. And that's how we need to frame this now. We need to save our children. Why are armed, masked men going into homes and pointing guns at children? Because we could have marijuana there. Why is the state taking children from the homes of loving parents and removing them and putting them in foster care like they did in Texas, where a 2-year-old just died? They took Alexandria from her parents in Texas and put her in a foster care system where she was murdered. Why are these things continuing to happen all around? And I can tell you why. It's because there's a media blackout. Many of these people, years down the road, 2-3 years down the road, you can't talk to the media. I know. I tried to get them to. You cannot tell people what's happening to you. You're waiting for more charges. You're waiting for retaliation. And so what we need to do, I believe, is take these people who have these stories to tell into closed-door sessions with their legislators. We need white Republican grandmothers. We need everyday normal people who aren't the poor and the brown and black folks who it's okay to do this to for so long. We need people to take to legislators. Even when they're afraid of retaliation, we can go do that at least. And then we can find the people like Barb Agro who don't give a shit anymore. They're like, whatever, you killed my husband, you've taken this from everybody. she's a stone, man. She's really an amazing woman. And Barb Ackrow is back in court in Oakland County after being a convicted felon, after becoming a widow, because the Court of Appeals, or the Supreme Court rather, determined that you can't disallow a jury from knowing you're a freaking patient. So now she gets her day in court again, but she's still back in that courtroom, and she's still having to endure all of this stuff. And she'll speak out, she absolutely will. Another thing that I want to leave you with, I probably spoke way over my 15 minutes.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sorry.
You always do.
I know, I'm so sorry, I was yelling. So do you want to just take a few minutes, either, if any of you have anything to say about, give these people tools, tell them what to do to rectify the situation.
I want to say one thing. I was sitting here listening to, Maria cry, and it's hard. I mean, I grew up, I've been through what Maria's been through. A long time ago, my family was raided. I spent Christmases visiting my dad in a visitation cell in federal prison. So growing up, as a kid with a parent who was incarcerated for a marijuana crime, growing up being afraid of law enforcement, and I was always very angry as a child. And recently, Sharmi and I were taking a mother and her baby who had been raided to see a civil rights attorney that Sharmi and I have been working with. Really great guy, and we took this woman and her child there, and she sat there and screamed and said she was so angry, talking about how they wouldn't let her breastfeed her baby during the raid, and the baby's crying, and she's sitting out on the grass, and just how horrible it was. And she said, how come you guys don't have any emotional response to what I'm telling you? You have you're not reacting emotionally to what I'm saying to you. And I said, well, we've been doing this for so long that we have to be numb to be able to deal with it. Like, we can't. And so that's something I think, like doctors who are surgeons, they have to become numb to, blood or whatever. And I think that's something, Sharmi and I, when we first started working in drug policy reform, called each other daily. Oh my God! And we screamed in the phone at each other. We screamed and we screamed and we screamed, and then we got it out and said, okay, let's get to work. And so I think we are very angry, but I think we had to numb ourselves in order to be able to function to work at some point. We had to turn it off and turn off the emotion and go to work.
And Sharmi is absolutely right. Drug prohibition does need to end. It didn't work before for alcohol. That's been proven. And like she said, and she just proved with her numbers, that it does not increase the safety for the public. And in fact, it actually makes it worse. And as women, we do need to act now. Robin and I got the chance to go to a luncheon last week with a representative. If you do take the time to go and talk to these people, they will listen to you. This is the adult way that you do to solve these real problems on the real legislative level. You need to get to the Capitol. You need to go talk to your local legislators. You need to call them. You need to write them. You need to take friends and family in with you that have been affected by this. I unfortunately can't take my dad in anymore. But you know what? That means that my fight is that much stronger, and I'm dedicated to this fight for that much longer for the rest of my life. I don't ever see myself stepping out of this industry for his memory. I could ease his pain, but I couldn't help him, but that's enough solace for me to know that I was doing the right thing as a child. And it's really unfortunate when you have to sit there and watch your children, your parents, your brothers, your sisters go through this, get torn apart, get beaten by the police, die because of police brutality, things that have been taken from them. And the time to act really is now, and if you don't get involved, you have no reason to sit there and bitch about the solution then, because you have to be a part of it in order for anything to get done here.
One of the tools that I want to leave you guys with is my group that I started here in Michigan. It's the Human Solution, and we, going to your legislators and your lawmakers, it's very important And it's something that you know, you guys definitely do need to do, get involved in that way. My organization goes at it a little bit from a different angle, so that maybe we can attack this on all sides. What we do is we go to court hearings and provide court support for defendants who are facing charges for marijuana. We write to prisoners who are in prison for marijuana. We pass out petitions for compassionate release of those prisoners. When we go into court, we wear a green ribbon, this green ribbon right here that's on my shirt, and the judges, the juries, the prosecutors, they look out into the crowd behind the defendant and they can see the sea of ribbons that is speaking so loudly to say, we do not agree with these laws. We don't think that this person should go to jail for a plant. You know, one of the last times that I was in court, there was 25 people in the crowd, and in a sea of it was motion day, so there were mostly lawyers in there, except for us with our green ribbons on. And when the defendant was done with his motion, and it was time for us to leave, all 25 of us got up in unison, completely silent, did not make an audio disruption whatsoever, but the judge had to stop calling the next case because we were noticed that day. And that's the kind of impact that we can make. And so that's, you know, that's fantastic. Some of the, not only is it showing, providing the message to these people that we're watching them and that we don't agree, it helps the defendants. And if for nothing else, you guys need to see what happens in some of these hearings. It's unbelievable. I tell stories of this to people who have never been to a court hearing, and they think I'm joking all the time because the tactics that they pull, for instance, we were at Barb Agro's hearing on Friday, and the prosecutor, Barb was on the witness stand, and the prosecutor was up there just beating up on this old woman who's 72 years old now, and telling her that, basically treating her like a thug off the street because she had a little pot. And one of the things that appalled me about this was you know, Barb's telling them that the plants were Sal's, and like Sharmi said, Sal had died from a heart attack a week later. And the prosecutor gets up there and she's telling Barb that, no, these plants can't be counted as Sal's. They're yours. We have to count them as yours because your husband's not here to tell us that they're not.
Oh.
Oakland County.
When is that acceptable? I can't think of a single circumstance that that would be acceptable. And these are the things that are happening in courtrooms every single day. So please, that's one thing that you can do. Join the Human Solution, go to court hearings, write to POWs, spread the word about jury nullification and other jury rights that are important in ending prohibition.
I'm going to change topic a little bit to talk about women in business in the industry and what I have also observed over the last 5 years. There really were no women in the industry when we first started out. It was definitely male-dominated. It's something that I was very used to because I had a nightclub in St. Joseph, Michigan, and it was Whirlpool Town, and it was very male-oriented. And woo-wee, I would find myself at the head of a table with maybe a dozen men fighting for my rights and my property, and nothing against men. I mean, that's not what it's about, but it was just where I was and what I was doing, and a lot of the businesses there were male-operated, and I cooked better than them. So I was very busy, but I felt that. But and you see that in the industry, and I think a lot of it was because women, before it was available to us where we felt comfortable with that card wouldn't show their face, but we were there. I have used cannabis since my first time I used cannabis, I was 14. And I grew up in the 70s, so I did try other things, but my choice was always cannabis. And I have 4 children. I grew up with cannabis on and off throughout my life. I owned 3 restaurants with 3 nightclubs, and I could have been drunk all the time, but alcohol was not my choice. After working all day and all night, I really looked forward to going home and just medicating on just a small amount of cannabis. And I felt better, but I hid it. It wasn't something that you would want anyone to know. And through the time that I had my children, I didn't use cannabis, same as I didn't smoke cigarettes in that time. But as my children were older, then I had to face my children. I have 30 through 16, and 2 of them use cannabis and 2 of them don't. So you go through the stages of a mother then dealing with your children as they become teenagers, of flushing it down the toilet going, oh my God, it's, and I never thought I would flush cannabis down the toilet, but it was flushed down the toilet a few times to have that impact to my children and have them understand that there is a certain age for everything. Of course, unless you are in pediatrics and really need it, then I think it definitely should be available to children. There aren't enough children that know about it right now. But as a mother, so I had my, I hid, I was in the closet, and as I grew older and my children grew older, my oldest son and I would sit and talk about how we should start a website called closetsmokers.com and try to get these people to come out of the closet, even though I was one still in it. Well, he came to me and told me, Mom, you don't have to live in the closet anymore. The law is passed and you can go get your card. And I had just fallen, had surgery, was on all kinds of pharmaceuticals. I felt so old and depressed. And as a woman, and I only used cannabis in the evening. Only in the evening. I only thought, just in the evening. I was always busy, never during the day. I couldn't smoke it before I went into work because I was too intense and I drove everyone crazy. So my point was my relaxation in the evening. The minute I got my card, I felt empowered. I felt okay to use it. I was home. I didn't have to go to work. And I had smoked my first joint with my cup of coffee. And when Mish was gone, my husband, for a week. And I continued to medicate throughout the day, in the morning. And I felt very good. I noticed no more, the pills were just, I wasn't taking my Vicodins, I wasn't taking my sleeping pills. I was like, wow, this is really, really happening, that no one knew this before. And no one knew, maybe in California and those that, really advocated. I don't know anyone here really knew that. I take you off of your pain meds and your sleeping meds and all of that. So, and I may have lost track of where I was going with women in business, but I was sold. I knew cannabis I knew it was medicine, that it made me feel good, and I felt better when I used just a small amount. But throughout the day, I functioned, I was busier than ever, I lost weight, I felt regulated, and I'm happier now than I've ever been in my life. And maybe it's because I'm free, maybe because I feel free. Now, not all of us are free. As these 4 ladies have talked about what happens to a lot of women and their children, and I tell all of the women, be very careful in this industry, especially if you have children, because they can take note of you. So be active. You don't have to, well, we're loud, but I said you can be loud too and involve your children, but be careful. But getting back to the industry, there were no women in the industry, and I am so happy to see, I was in Lansing on Wednesday, and a hydroponic store owner lady came up to me and she said, oh my God, I'm just so glad to meet you. There's not many women in this industry, and I'll tell you, this weekend here, I met Jane and so many women with things that our organization, we educate, complete education from the very beginning, you see the doctor, to everything that's happening in the state. So we educate them, but we also talk about the health aspect of it in the industry and how to be safe, but to get involved. And this is a good industry to be in. It's the ground floor of a new industry here in Michigan, and we need this. And the women are finally coming out of the closet and feeling safer, I believe, as they see more women. One other thing I want to touch on is couples. I love the couples because we're just double trouble. We are. So I see couples here. Get active as a couple, not just one. Both of you. You know, if you're both here, then you have the interest. And cannabis isn't something that you can really go out in the community and have someone else that has that interest right away. You have to meet those people, and we stay quiet about it in the closet sometimes. So grab your partner and join an organization. There's many great organizations. Join all of them, but join one and stay active with it. Get a mission, grab your partner and get on the mission and make it happen.
Are there any questions? Anybody got any questions? Answers? I want to thank you. I'm pretty sure we're probably out of time here.
Oh, yeah.
We are. I want to thank everybody for coming in and listening so patiently. And again, I just want to thank all of you for the work that you're doing. And you know, I feel like it's really important to end like Heidi did with a really positive note, because even though this is really difficult for a lot of families right now, before we passed this Medical Marijuana Act, you never saw people speaking out. You just didn't. And you see it everywhere now. You see protesters, you know, God bless Marie and Steve for their work with, you know, Court Crusaders. You see people commenting on comments. We outnumber them. We outnumber them, we really, really do, and we just have to be patient and keep praying and keep working together and forgiving ourselves and everyone else and kicking ass until they learn to respect our rights.
Great job, ladies.
Thank you.